Have you ever had a crush that seemed perfect? Maybe it was someone who gave you butterflies just thinking about them, or that person who seemed to check every box on your list. At first, everything feels like it's straight out of a fairy tale, but then, little by little, you start noticing certain behaviors that leave you feeling confused. Something feels off, and you can't quite put your finger on it. You try to brush it off, thinking, maybe that's just how they are. But deep down, something tells you it could be more than just a personality quirk. It might be the start of a pattern that leaves you feeling more drained than happy. Maybe they disappear without a word, leaving you guessing. Or they're so over-the-top romantic that it feels more like a performance than something real. Or maybe they're so obsessed with perfection that you constantly feel judged. These behaviors start small, almost unnoticeable, but over time, they can become exhausting. Some crushes are emotional traps disguised as fairy tales. Sometimes the very qualities that draw us in are the same ones that hide toxic patterns. After all, who hasn't been swept off their feet by charm, confidence, or that irresistible air of mystery? But often those traits come bundled with behaviors that can drain your emotional energy. Today we're diving into the 8 types of toxic crushes you need to avoid. Each one has something about them that seems captivating at first, but over time they can reveal patterns that might put your emotional well-being at risk. The goal here isn't to judge, but to help you recognize these signs so you can protect yourself from draining relationships. So if you've ever had a crush that left you feeling more confused than happy, this video is for you. Grab a drink, get comfortable, and let's go on this journey together. Because after today, you'll know exactly how to spot these emotional traps, and of course, how to avoid falling into them again. 1. The unattainable. Let's start with the kind of crush that leaves you intrigued from the very beginning. The unattainable has this air of self-sufficiency and mystery, like nothing in the world could ever rattle them. You catch yourself thinking, what's really going on in their mind? That mystery is what makes them so irresistible. Think of someone who only replies to your texts at the last possible moment, using that super casual tone that leaves you wanting more. Or someone who, in the middle of a conversation, casually mentions a fascinating hobby and then changes the subject like it's no big deal. They always leave you wanting to know more, and that's when you find yourself investing more and more of your energy into them. And then you start wondering, am I overthinking, or do they really never let anyone get close? As the relationship progresses, you realize that their independence isn't as attractive as it seemed at first. The unattainable keeps a wall between you that never seems to come down, no matter how hard you try to connect. For example, you try to set up a date and they cancel last minute with some vague excuse like, something came up at work, or after an amazing conversation, they disappear for days only to reappear acting like nothing happened. You're left questioning if you're doing something wrong, when in reality, the issue is their emotional unavailability. If you feel like you're constantly chasing someone who never looks back, it might be time to reevaluate whether this is worth your energy. Relationships should be a two-way street, and if only one side is putting in the effort, that balance will never work. 2. The over-the-top romantic. Now let's talk about a type of crush who at first glance seems like they stepped straight out of a romance novel. The over-the-top romantic is intense, passionate, and absolutely loves grand gestures. Being with someone like this can feel exhilarating. They make you feel like you're the only person in the world. Maybe it's someone who shows up to the first date with an unexpected gift, like an enormous bouquet of flowers, or someone who surprises you with messages filled with declarations like, "I've never met anyone like you." These gestures create an instant connection, and you think, wow, this person really cares. But as the days go by, you start to notice that all this romance is like fireworks, spectacular at first, but quick to fizzle out. The over-the-top romantic is more in love with the idea of a perfect romance than with the actual relationship. This becomes clear when the grand gestures start fading and their consistency just doesn't match up. For example, they might make big promises like, "I want to spend the rest of my life with you," even though you've only known each other for a short time. But when it comes time to actually invest in the relationship, their actions fall short of their words. Or worse, they might quickly shift that same level of intensity to someone else, leaving you feeling discarded. What started as a fairy tale begins to feel like a cycle of unmet expectations. Healthy relationships aren't built on grand gestures alone. They require commitment and depth. If everything feels intense but nothing feels lasting, it might be time to reconsider how this dynamic is affecting your life. 3. The competitive one. Let's talk about a type of crush who at first seems truly inspiring. They're driven, ambitious, and always chasing a new goal. Being around someone like this makes you feel like you can accomplish anything too. It's like their energy is contagious. Maybe they challenge you to a fun race at the park, turning it into a playful competition. Or they excitedly tell you about their latest promotion at work, and you think, wow, this person is so focused, I want to be like that too. In the beginning, their competitiveness feels healthy, even motivating, but over time, you realize that this competitiveness isn't just limited to work or hobbies. It seeps into the relationship. Suddenly, everything feels like a contest. Instead of celebrating your achievements together, they're often overshadowed by their own. For example, you might share that you finally hit an important milestone, only to hear something like, "That's great, I actually did something similar but in less time." Or even something as simple as picking a restaurant for dinner turns into a debate about who has better taste or more refined knowledge. The worst part is, instead of feeling celebrated, you start feeling diminished. It's like you need permission to be proud of yourself. This dynamic can become exhausting because instead of having a partner, it feels like you're constantly dealing with a rival. Love isn't a competition, it's a team effort. Partners should root for each other, not try to one-up each other. If you feel like you're stuck in an endless race, it might be time to reconsider how this is affecting your happiness. 4. The eternal victim. Now we've come to the type of crush who always seems to be caught in an emotional storm. The eternal victim is the person who, at first, tugs at your heartstrings. They share stories of being mistreated, unfairly judged, and how life always seems to be against them. You think, maybe I can be the person to change that for them. You might hear something like, "All my past relationships were a disaster. No one ever truly appreciated me." And that makes you feel special, as if you're the one who can give them the care they've always been missing. But as time goes on, you start to notice that the storm never ends. No matter how much you try to help, their problems always linger. You might suggest something simple to improve their situation, but their response is always the same. "You just don't understand how hard it is for me." Maybe you've had a tough day and decide to vent to them, but instead of receiving support, you find the conversation quickly shifts back to their problems. It feels like there's no room for you. Everything revolves around how difficult their life is. The worst part is, the more you try to help, the more trapped you feel. Carrying someone else's emotional baggage all on your own can be overwhelming because it drains the energy you should be using to take care of yourself. Relationships should be partnerships, where both people support each other. You deserve a partner who shares their vulnerabilities but is also willing to grow. If they always choose to play the victim, it might be time to ask yourself whether this relationship is helping you thrive or just weighing you down. 5. The self-absorbed achievers. Now picture a crush who seems to have their life perfectly mapped out. They have clear goals, a well-structured routine, and they know exactly what they want from the future. It's almost impossible not to be drawn to someone with so much focus and determination. Maybe they talk about their accomplishments with passion, or they have their entire day planned out with perfectly aligned schedules and objectives. You think, this person will inspire me to be even better. At first, being around them feels like it will elevate your own life. But over time, you realize that you're just trying to fit into a schedule that existed long before you came along. It feels like there's little to no room for your needs or desires. And even worse, when you try to share your feelings, their response is something like, "I can't deal with this right now. I have other priorities." Picture this. You suggest spending a weekend together, but they turn it down because they need to focus on something important. Or you try to bring up something emotional and they brush it off as if what you feel is secondary. Eventually, you start feeling more like a sticky note in their life, something that can be moved around or ignored, but never prioritized. It's lonely and frustrating because what started as admiration turns into a deep sense of being sidelined. Healthy relationships are about building something together, and that includes making each other a priority. Ambition is an amazing quality, but it should never replace care and commitment to the person standing beside you. 6. The unpredictable charmer. Let's talk about the kind of crush who lights up every room they walk into. They have a natural charisma, can make you laugh effortlessly, and turn even the simplest moments into exciting adventures. Being with them feels like every day is unique, and that's incredibly attractive. Picture someone who, on a random day, invites you to go on a spontaneous outing just to discover something new together, or who tells stories so captivating that you feel like you're living in a movie. They have this magnetic energy that makes you want to be around them all the time. But over time, you start to notice that this energy comes with emotional instability. One day, they make you feel like the most special person in the world. The next, they're distant or irritable for reasons you can't quite understand. It's like you're constantly walking on eggshells, trying to predict their next mood. Maybe they cancel plans at the last minute because they're just not in the mood, or they change their mind so abruptly that you can barely keep up. Even worse, minor disagreements can spiral into full-blown arguments, leaving you confused and even blaming yourself. This unpredictability can be emotionally draining. At first, it feels like an exhilarating roller coaster, but over time, the constant highs and lows become unsustainable. You realize that instead of feeling happy and secure, you're always trying to prevent the next crisis. Life already has enough challenges. Relationships should be a source of balance and security, not another layer of uncertainty. If you feel like you're constantly tiptoeing around to keep the peace, it might be time to ask yourself if this relationship is truly lifting you up or just wearing you down. 7. The perfectionist. Now we're talking about the kind of crush who seems to have everything perfectly under control. The perfectionist. Their home is spotless, their routine is meticulously planned, and they show an impressive level of dedication and attention to detail. At first, it's almost impossible not to admire someone so organized and focused. Maybe they plan flawless dates, with the perfect restaurant, the ideal table, and even background music chosen for the moment. Or they surprise you with a gift that feels like it was picked after a detailed study of your personality. Everything around them runs like clockwork. But as time goes on, you realize that their standards aren't just for themselves. Slowly, you start to feel like you're being adjusted to fit into their version of perfection, and it's exhausting. For example, something as simple as leaving a glass out of place might turn into a lecture about organization, or when you try to do something thoughtful for them, like cooking dinner, the response is more about what could have been better than appreciation for the gesture itself. Over time, this relentless pursuit of perfection can start to wear down your self-esteem. You might find yourself wondering, am I even good enough for them? The constant pressure can turn what initially felt inspiring into something that drains your energy. Healthy relationships don't demand perfection, they thrive on acceptance. If you feel like you're constantly being evaluated or adjusted, it might be time to reconsider whether this relationship allows you to be yourself or is simply trying to mold you into someone you're not. 8. The savior or hero. And finally, we have the type of crush who seems determined to solve all your problems. The savior or hero comes into your life with the attitude of someone who's here to fix everything. At first, this can feel comforting because they make you feel like you'll always have someone to lean on. They might say things like, "Let me handle that for you," or take on responsibilities you didn't even ask them to, as if their role is to ensure nothing goes wrong. This protective stance creates an initial sense of safety and support. But over time, you realize that this need to help isn't just a gesture of care. It's their way of feeling indispensable. Anytime you try to handle something on your own, they step in, almost as if your independence is a threat to them. For example, you might decide to tackle a work issue by yourself, but they quickly offer solutions and insist on being involved in the process. And if you try to set boundaries, they might respond with something like, "I just wanted to help because I care." This can leave you feeling guilty even when you shouldn't. This dynamic takes away your autonomy and creates an imbalance in the relationship. The savior often turns the connection into something more about control than true partnership. Over time, you might start feeling more like a project than an equal partner. Healthy relationships are built on mutual support, but they also leave room for growth and the ability to face challenges on your own. A real partner doesn't try to save you, they encourage you to find your own strength. And that wraps up our journey through the 8 types of toxic crushes you should avoid: the unattainable, the over-the-top romantic, the competitive one, the eternal victim, the self-absorbed achiever, the unpredictable charmer, the perfectionist, and the savior. Each of them has something undeniably attractive at first. After all, we're all drawn to qualities that captivate us. But as we've seen, those same traits can sometimes hide behaviors that take a toll on our emotional well-being. Toxic relationships don't always start with obvious red flags. Often they reveal themselves gradually, and it's easy to get caught up justifying someone else's behavior. But here's something to remember: you deserve more than excuses. You deserve a relationship that brings balance, support, and mutual growth. If there's one thing I want you to take away from this video, it's this. Recognizing these patterns isn't about judgment, it's about protecting yourself. It's about understanding that love should be a place of peace, not constant confusion. No matter how charming or irresistible someone seems at first, if their behavior is draining your energy, that's not love, it's exhaustion. So before diving deep into a relationship, ask yourself, does this relationship make me feel stronger or more drained? That simple question could save you from many of the challenges we've discussed today. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever encountered one of these types of crushes? Or maybe there's another behavior you think should be on this list. Share your stories in the comments. I love reading them, and who knows, your experience might help someone else going through something similar. And of course, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. It helps me keep creating content like this and building a community where we can all learn more about healthy relationships. Most importantly, remember this. Love should feel light, welcoming, and full of balance. If something doesn't make you feel that way, it might be time to rethink it. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.